Biblical Principles of Building Wealth, Faith and Finance by Ainsley, Reid. Narrated by Tim Miller Voiceovers, LLC. Copyright 2020. All rights reserved. Introduction. God desires prosperity for His people. He has promised wealth and great blessings to those who abide by His commandments. This book seeks to explore different paths of wealth creation that are in alignment with His Word. It seeks to unearth the many proven principles of money management outlined in the Scriptures and make practical recommendations which, if followed, will guarantee financial peace and independence. Finally, the author draws upon the sound advice of past and contemporary financial teachers that have made an indelible mark on his life and the lives of countless others. Considering the benevolence of God, there is no reason why anyone should be poor. Chapter 1. The Value of Knowing the True Source of Wealth. As we seek to explore the merits of building wealth by following the proven principles of money management outlined in the Scriptures, it is important to note that God desires prosperity and wealth for His children. In Deuteronomy 28:12-13, God promises wealth and prosperity to those who abide by His commandments. It says, "The Lord shall open unto thee His good treasure, the heaven to give the rain unto thy land in his season, and to bless all the work of thine hand. And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. And the Lord shall make thee the head, and not the tail. And thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. If that thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day, to observe and to do them." Considering the promises of blessings in these verses, there is really no good reason any believer should be poor. In truth, there is no one way to wealth, but the first best step anyone could seek to take in building wealth is to seek God's face, get to know Him, and develop a personal relationship with Him before pursuing material wealth, and all things will eventually fall into place. The Bible warns that the love of money is the root of evil. Therefore, those who pursue wealth outside of God, oblivious of the connection between the material and the spiritual, run the risk of living in persistent depravity or being quickly ruined by their ignorance or decadence. James, New International Version, chapter 4, 2b-3 notes, "You desire, but you do not have. So you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want. So you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures." It is critical that we do not elevate our desire for material wealth above our desire for spiritual wealth. They are both important, but the material is best viewed as a byproduct of the spiritual. With this in mind, it is more wholesome to love and pursue the Lord, from whom all good things flow, and He will bless you with all you may need or desire, as long as it is within His will. Matthew 6:33 admonishes us to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all things shall be added unto you. The story of young King Solomon is a very good example of one who sought to acquire integrity and wisdom before the material, but was rewarded with great riches because of this. In 1 Kings 3:9, responding to God's offer of anything he desired, Solomon said, "Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong." He could have asked for anything, but he asked for wisdom, and he was consequently rewarded with riches and honor. Nothing is wrong with desiring to be wealthy, but it is more important to seek wisdom and divine understanding first, and material wealth will start to accrue much easier. Growth will come as a direct result of your increased awareness of the intersectionality between the cosmic and the divine aspects of the world. The Bible tells us that life is more than just food and raiment, and anyone who does not get that will quickly realize that money and the material, in general, cannot guarantee satisfaction and happiness. The diminishing marginal utility of income and wealth is well documented. Studies show that as income increases, individuals gain a correspondingly smaller increase in satisfaction and happiness. In layman's terms, more money may not make you happy. Chapter 2. The value of setting financial goals. Once we acknowledge the Creator as the true source of all wealth, we must then seek to set clear financial goals. This is the next crucial step on the path to becoming wealthy. By seeking the Lord first, then establishing goals, we can ensure that our priorities are aligned with God's will, so we can move forward in pursuit of our dreams without compromising our integrity. The blind pursuit of wealth has caused many people to get involved in drugs, gambling, prostitution, and other kinds of nefarious activities. But this approach is destructive, and it must, therefore, be rejected by those who are wise. The Bible rebuffs this practice in Mark 8:36 by asking, "What shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his soul? It is just not worth it." Therefore, as noted above, our goals must be in alignment with the Word of God. Next, our financial goals must be expressly declared, specific, measurable, and attainable. The importance of declaring our goals cannot be overemphasized. We must understand that there is power in our declarations, and this is confirmed in Proverbs 18:21, which states that there is life and death in the power of the tongue. Therefore, let us start to declare life in our finances. Declare as you pray or as you speak with friends that you shall henceforth walk in wealth and abundance instead of lack and deprivation. Say it loud and clear at every appropriate opportunity so the universe can hear it, and in time a shift will start to take place. Your expectations will change, and the expectations of others toward you will start to change. You will start to exude and attract positivity, and people that are more progressive will be drawn to you. The dynamics of your world will start to change to reflect the changes in your state of mind. It is literally a question of mind over matter. In Habakkuk 2:2, the prophet was advised to write the vision and make it plain on tablets so he may run who reads it. This is powerful stuff. Not only should we make verbal declarations about our goals, but we must also take time to write them down. World-renowned motivational speaker and author Napoleon Hill, in his book Think and Grow Rich, encourages us to write down the things that we want to achieve in life. He also says that we should write down the actions and practices that will lead to achieving those goals. For example, if you want to start an emergency fund of $1,000, it may be useful to write down that you will not spend more than a specific amount each day or month. You may also write down how much you intend to save or deposit in the bank every time you get money. It is also important to note that our written goals must be measurable and attainable. Unrealistic goals will only frustrate you and weaken your resolve. Napoleon Hill said it well by noting that weak desires will bring weak results, just as a small fire brings a small amount of heat. He also reminds us that whatever the mind can conceive, we can achieve. Therefore, we must seek to set goals that are robust and worthy of effort but attainable. For example, instead of saying that you want to win the lotto and get rich in 5 years, it may be more realistic to say that you plan to pay off a debt or increase your income or savings by 50% in 5 years. You may also note that you will do this by seeking a promotion, a better paying job, and by starting a side hustle or second job. Again, always remember to attach to each goal clear, actionable steps that you will take in order to achieve these ideals. The final point to note in setting goals is that they must be time-specific. Napoleon Hill tells us to set a deadline for action and for the commencement or completion of each goal. He notes that people often lack the motivation to pursue goals because they lack the impetus to take necessary action soon. Action produces results, but procrastination often leads to failure. Therefore, the best time to start pursuing your goals is now, or as soon as possible. Time specifications and deadlines are crucial in goal attainment as they help us to segment larger objectives into more manageable portions. In addition, they help create a framework to foster greater accountability and promote productivity. Simply knowing that you have limited time to achieve a specific task will push you to do as much as possible now. You may also feel a greater sense of achievement when you meet your production target within a set time. It is said that if you do not know where you are going, any road will get you there, and this certainly applies to building wealth. By setting clear financial goals, you have already taken the first step on the path to financial freedom. Chapter 3. The value of finding work that is in alignment with your passion and purpose. To build wealth, it is very important to learn the value of work, enterprise, business, industry, and productivity. Proverbs chapter 6, 6-8 orders the lazy to, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest." These verses clearly teach that work is fundamental to progress and success. Indeed, from this allegory, we can learn the importance of virtues such as diligence, resilience, forecasting, smart work, saving, and preparation in building wealth. To build wealth, one must be willing to work hard, but in this modern age, it is even more important to work smart. People who are wise in the use of money grow wealthy as they work to build assets and create products or services that others find valuable and are willing to pay for. However, the foolish work and spend their money mainly on consumer goods and liabilities that drain their income and keep them poor. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 11 shows the stark contrast between the wise and foolish as it states, "Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense." God created us all with unique gifts, talents, abilities, interests, and qualities that we can harness and use purposefully to work, build assets, and create streams of income and grow wealthy. Genesis chapter 2 verse 15 tells us that after man was created, Adam was placed in the Garden of Eden to dress it and keep it. This clearly shows that man was able to work and be responsible for something. We are all stewards of the earth and the resources that God has given us. Another thing that becomes very clear from this reading is that every man, every woman must seek to discover their purpose in life. This is important because your work ought to be driven by your purpose, and your purpose should become evident through your work. With this in mind, it is wise that we do not confuse our jobs with our life's work, because they are not always synonymous. Your job is something you may happen to do for income, but your work is much more than that. Your work ought to reflect your passion and purpose. Many people spend all their lives in unfulfilling jobs they hate that do nothing to advance their purpose, but this is a horrible way to live. It will be very useful for anyone who desires to build wealth to find their Eden, their niche, their strength, a field of study, a career, an enterprise, a job that is in alignment with their purpose. This will help to add meaning and fulfillment to your work and your life. A professor of philosophy named Arthur Zathmary in the Princeton Alumni Weekly in 1982 put it this way: "Find something you love to do, and you'll never have to work a day in your life." Still, I must warn, if you have an unfulfilling job that you hate, do not just get up and leave it without a plan, for that would be reckless. It is better to keep that job you hate until you find your Eden, until you find the job that is in alignment with your passion and your purpose. Keep doing the job that puts food on your table while simultaneously developing your passion into an enterprise that could one day replace the job you hate. Robert Kiyosaki, in his book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, puts it best when he said, "Do not spend your life minding other people's business. Mind your own business. You will become a prodigious builder of wealth when you learn to spend time developing your own business." Very few people throughout history became rich by working for others. Most self-made millionaires got rich by developing or investing in a business. So, it would be wise for anyone who seeks to build wealth to think of building their own business instead of spending all their life working for others at a job they hate. Genesis chapter 3, verse 17b through 19 helps us to understand how work, which God originally intended to be a blessing, became such a burden to mankind. Verse 19 says, "In the sweat of thy brow shalt thou eat bread." And this is reflected in the reality today that most people hate their jobs, so don't think you are alone if you dread going to work every day. Your dingy supervisor probably feels the same way too. In order to decide if your job is in alignment with your purpose, it may be useful to answer this question. Does your job feel like a blessing or burden? Whatever the answer may be, the Bible tells us in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. Hence, just do your best on your current job as you seek the Lord to help you develop yourself and develop your passion into a problem-solving, value-adding, cash-producing enterprise and watch God open doors of greater blessings in your life. Chapter 4. The Value of Saving. Across different societies, most people work very hard all their lives. Some earn a lot, while others earn the minimum wage, just making enough to get by. Despite these vast variations in income levels, however, the majority end up living from paycheck to paycheck. Indeed, only a minority ever truly learn to master the principles of building wealth. This reality falls in line with the saying that it is not how much you earn that is important, but really how much you are able to keep. Proverbs 21:20 adds credence to this view as it states that the wise man saves for the future, but the foolish man spends whatever he gets. The bottom line is this: anyone who desires to build wealth must learn to save. George S. Clason, in his book The Richest Man in Babylon, tells the story of two characters, Banzir, who was a chariot builder, and his friend Kobe, who was a musician. They both worked hard and became the best at their craft, but were still poor. So they decided to seek the advice of their childhood friend Arcad, who by contrast had become very wealthy. Arcad provided them with some time-tested and proven principles that he used in building his wealth, and these lessons are still relevant today. "I found the road to wealth," he said, "when I decided that part of all I earned was mine to keep, and so will you." This may seem simple, but it is a key principle in accumulating wealth. We cannot accumulate wealth if we do not learn to save. The book recommends that we pay ourselves save no less than 10% of all our earnings. If this is done, then after 10 years of work and saving, you will have the equivalent of 1 year of income. This means that if you earn $50,000 per year and you save 10%, $5,000, in 10 years you will have saved $50,000. Again, this may seem simple, but it can be revolutionary if practiced with discipline. Studies show that 50% of Americans do not have enough cash saved to deal with a $500 emergency without going into debt. This is really sad, given the average American income is between $30,000 and $50,000 per year. So, how long have you been working, and how much should you have saved as a minimum already? To find the answer, just calculate 10% of your annual income and multiply it by the number of years you have been working, and you will get a general idea of what you should already have had in savings at the least. If you are disappointed when you compare the results with what is actually in your account, you should be. But don't give up. Remember this: it's never too late to start saving and building wealth. The first step is having the earnest desire to move from a state of poverty to prosperity and then doing something about it. Genesis chapter 39 verses 2 and 3 helps us to understand that prosperity and by extension wealth or even poverty are a reflection of our mindset. In this passage, Joseph was a slave, but he was referred to as a prosperous man. Because of his faith in God, his integrity, his ingenuity, and his ability to endure hardship, everything he touched prospered. From this passage, we learn that you don't have to have family support, status, a university degree, or a high-grossing job to start building wealth. Through hard work, optimism, faith in God, and smart investing, even the person earning a minimum wage can grow to become wealthier over time. Matthew 7:7 confirms this, as it states, "Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you." By trusting in the providence of God and investing your time and resources wisely, there is nothing you can't achieve. God desires prosperity for His people. We just have to seek Him first, and all these things shall be added. This view is also confirmed in St. Matthew 6:33. It's interesting to note that the Bible is even more radical in its recommendation about exactly how much one should save than even George Clason's book. In Genesis chapter 41, verses 34 through 36, Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream and prophesied that Egypt would experience 7 years of prosperity, followed by 7 years of famine. In anticipation of what could have been a national tragedy, Joseph wisely advised Pharaoh to appoint officers over the land and take up, save, the fifth part, 20% of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years, and that food shall be restored to the land against the 7 years of famine, that the land perish not through the famine. From this, we learn that the Bible recommends that we save 20% of our income to guard against future challenges. This saving should be used to create an emergency fund. One thing we can be sure of in life is that emergencies will happen. This brings to mind the old adage known as Murphy's Law, which states that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. People will get sick. People will die. There will be accidents, breadwinners may lose their jobs, and other unexpected events will require you to spend money. However, as in the case of Egypt, if we prepare for these emergencies by having enough money saved up, then we will have enough to mitigate the negative impacts of unforeseen events. Your emergency fund should be in a separate account, one that is harder to access than usual. Dave Ramsey, in his book The Total Money Makeover, recommends 7 steps to financial peace. In baby step 1, he recommends that you start an emergency fund of at least $1,000. Start to pay down your debts in baby step 2. Then begin baby step 3 by boosting your emergency fund to amass at least 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses. Your emergency fund will give you peace of mind during disasters and give you the confidence to weather the financial storms of life. Chapter 5. The Value of Controlling Your Expenditure. Building wealth requires that you learn to control your expenditure. In other words, only by spending less than you earn can you increase your net worth. And the best way to control your spending is to live by a budget. This is definitely recommended by the Bible. Luke chapter 14, verse 28 addresses this point directly. It states, "For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it?" A budget helps you to track every dollar you spend and to plan or at least think about your spending ahead of time instead of just spending impulsively as so many of us do. Many people think that there is no way they can stick to a budget because they are too poor. They complain that it makes no sense, as the numbers do not add up and they always end up in the red, no matter how much they try to reduce spending. In such instances, it can be frustrating to keep budgeting. However, the reality is that these are the times when budgeting is most crucial, as folks will be better able to track spending. Sticking to a budget does require sacrifice and discipline, but the results are worth it. Get a book for your budget, or simply go online, as many budgeting tools and financial materials are readily available on the internet. The truth is that money has a strange habit of slipping through our fingers if we are not paying attention. Quite often, our money is done even before it reaches our pockets, or our paycheck is done, and we don't even know where it went. However, All this will change with budgeting, as it will enable you to become more deliberate in deciding exactly where every dollar goes. Controlling expenses is a matter of controlling the desires of the heart. And this is very hard since desire will always grow to meet and eventually surpass a person's level of income. This is why when a typical employee gets a pay raise, the first thing they are likely to do is to think about how to spend it. They start to make plans to get a car upgrade, renovate the kitchen, or buy that new smartphone. This is known as lifestyle inflation. This occurs when your income increases and suddenly your expenses increase to match or surpass your new income. The truth is that there will always be things that we desire, and nothing is wrong with fulfilling the legitimate desires of our heart, as long as you can afford it. The trick is to rank those desires by placing them in order of priority, then allocate funds through your budget to deal with each based upon funds available. This, however, should only be done after your savings and other basic needs are met. So one does not have to be a miser, a minimalist, or austere to build wealth, but one must be wise in the handling of money. In this debt-based economy, people are hooked to their credit cards. They often mindlessly browse traditional retail shops and online stores and buy what they see, just because they can, even if they cannot afford it. Such behavior is addressed in 1 John chapter 2, verse 16. Which states that the lust of the eyes and the pride of life come not from the Father. From this, we learn that spending more than we can afford is rooted in lust and pride, and this is ungodly. It's like eating more than what your body can digest. It's called gluttony. It's called greed. It is a disease that comes from the devil. Learning to live within your means is a critical principle that all who desire to build wealth must observe. The ability to delay gratification for greater future benefit is crucial to controlling expenses and growing wealth. In our fast-paced culture, where everything is expected to be ready at the touch of a button, patience is no longer a virtue that people find necessary to cultivate. Everything is instant, and this mentality feeds a desire, in young people especially, to want to get rich now or die trying. History shows, however, that such expectations are often misguided, as most self-made millionaires took several decades to grow their wealth through a process that involved hard work, deliberate planning, patience, and the steady execution of stated goals. Anyone who desires to grow wealthy must practice the marshmallow test. The marshmallow experiment was a study on delayed gratification that was carried out in 1972 by psychologist Walter Mischel, a professor at Stanford University. In this study, children were offered a choice between one small but immediate reward, a marshmallow, or 2 marshmallows if they waited for a while. During this time, the researchers left the room for about 15 minutes and then returned and gave the reward. In follow-up studies, the researchers found that children who were able to wait longer for the preferred rewards tended to have better life outcomes, as measured by SAT scores, educational attainment, body mass index, and other life measures. The clear lesson here is that if one desires to build wealth, one must demonstrate a capacity and, indeed, the propensity to delay the kind of instant gratification that comes from spending all your money now in order to save, invest, and secure gains for the future. Of course, this does not mean that people should ignore the needs and desires of the present and pine after some lofty future ideal. Still, with studies showing that the majority of Americans, and indeed people around the world, live paycheck to paycheck, it is obvious that most people lack the financial discipline that is required to grow wealthy. As they say, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. This basically means that you cannot desire to amass wealth if you keep spending every dollar you get. Again, building wealth is not so much about how much you earn. It is more about how much you are able to keep. Chapter 6. The value of increasing your financial IQ and your income. Living within your means is not always easy. It often involves a lot of sacrifices. So a good way to prevent austerity when seeking to build wealth is to actually increase your income and, most importantly, increase your financial IQ. It is quite interesting that we spend so many years and thousands of dollars at school trying to get a good education, but in most cases, school does not teach people about money, how to make money, how to manage money, and how to stay out of debt. The result is that the vast majority of people in our society, even those who are educated, are very ignorant when it comes to making money and making money work for them. But the Bible offers a solution. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7 declares, "Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding." Verse 8 continues to say, "Exalt her, wisdom, and she shall promote thee, and shall bring thee honor when thou embrace her." This works well with the idea that anyone who desires to build wealth must spend time developing their financial intelligence. Read books about money management. Listen to audiobooks and podcasts on YouTube. Go back to school and improve your qualifications. Talk to successful people who have done well with money and seek to learn new ways of increasing your income. On this point, I would totally recommend 5 important books that have the power to change your life. The first great book is called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. With a focus on following your dreams and finding purpose in life, it is very compelling and inspirational. Next, we have The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. Dave offers 7 steps that lead to financial peace. The third book is called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This book is revolutionary as it challenges traditional views and approaches to wealth creation, and it forces you to think outside the box. The fourth book, which is my personal favorite, is called The Richest Man in Babylon. Written by George S. Clason, it uses stories to teach lessons on how to grow wealth. The last, but certainly not the least great book, is the Bible. These books all contain important truths, principles, lessons about money management, which, when considered together, will help to strengthen your foundation of financial intelligence and lead you to grow wealthier. There is a symbiotic relationship between wealth, poverty, and financial IQ. People who understand the money game will buy assets that produce cash flow. They will build or invest in businesses or do side jobs that increase their income. They then use their earnings to buy even more assets that produce more cash flow. As Robert Kiyosaki would say, the rich do not work for money. They work for assets, which in time will start working for them. The poor and financially ignorant, however, spend all their time working for money, which they then spend immediately on bills and consumer goods, so they always remain poor. The situation of the middle class is a bit peculiar. According to Kiyosaki, the middle class typically earn good money, but they spend their money buying liabilities that they think are assets, and this prevents them from becoming wealthy. He defines an asset as anything that puts money into your pocket, while liabilities take money out of your pocket. From this perspective, it can be argued that a house is not always an asset because, in most cases, a house is taking money out of your pocket. You have to pay insurance, HOA fees, property taxes, maintenance, and the list goes on. From this perspective, it can be argued that a house is not always an asset because, in most cases, a house is taking money out of your pocket. You have to pay insurance, HOA fees, property taxes, maintenance, and the list goes on. A house, in many cases, is definitely an asset to the bank because they are receiving cash flow from it every month when you pay your mortgage, but to you, it's a liability. It can become an asset if it is used as a rental property or if it builds equity and is sold at a profit in the future. This principle also applies to a car. Many people spend thousands of dollars each year buying very expensive cars, which constantly depreciate. They endure heavy monthly payments on a car loan because they think it's an asset, but in most cases, a car is a liability because it takes money from your pocket. Again, you have to buy gas, change parts, pay for maintenance and insurance, and this is in addition to the monthly payments. It is also worth noting that the moment you drive a new car off the lot, it loses a big chunk of its value. Still, people continue to spend thousands on new cars, thinking they are assets, when in most instances they are only assets to the car companies and financial institutions that sponsor these loans. Obviously, a vehicle may constitute an asset if it is putting money in your pocket. So it's all about understanding the difference between assets and liabilities, so more effort can be placed into acquiring assets. To be clear, I am not against buying a house or car because, for most people, these are important for comfort, security, convenience, and independence. However, the important thing is not being ignorant when embarking on such major financial undertakings. The key is buying a house or a car that you can afford. Your mortgage should not constitute more than 25% of your monthly income, and after adding the car payment, student loans, or other consumer debts, your total loan payments should not exceed 36% of your gross monthly income. This is known as your debt-to-income ratio, and it is a very important metric to consider when trying to determine what you can afford. With this in mind, I agree with Dave Ramsey, who recommends that you avoid debt and save your money to buy a decent but affordable used car, which you can sell and upgrade every 2 to 5 years, instead of taking out a new car loan at interest. Many people make fairly good money, but end up being house or car poor because too much of their monthly income is committed toward repaying mortgages and/or car loans they cannot afford. This must be avoided at all cost if you desire to build wealth. Remember, the Bible says, wisdom is the principal thing, so raise your financial IQ and it will become easier to raise your income, control your expenses, and grow your net worth. This principle correlates with Proverbs chapter 8, verse 18, which, in reference to wisdom, declares, "Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable, sustainable, riches and right living." Chapter 7. The Value of Managing Your Debt. Learning to manage debt plays an integral role in building wealth, as being in debt can be a very overwhelming and debilitating experience. If not handled wisely, debt can lead to stress, depression, other health issues, and in some serious cases, even suicide. However, there are proven principles outlined in the Bible and other texts which, if observed, can be useful in helping you to grow wealthy while avoiding the debt trap. A reading of Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 12 through 13, provides great insights into God's design for His people regarding wealth. It states that, if we follow His commands, principles, the Lord shall open unto us His good treasure, and bless all the work of our hand. It states further that, thou shalt lend unto many, and thou shalt not have to borrow. Verse 13 says, the Lord shall make thee the head, and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. These verses explicitly show that it is not God's desire for His people to live in perpetual deficit, as is the case for many people in the working class. God does not prohibit debt, but His intention is for all to strive to walk in abundance. This point is also underscored in Psalm 37, verse 25, which states, I have been young, and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. After reading Psalm 37:25, one may ask, does this mean that people who are struggling financially are unrighteous? And the answer is no. However, it does mean that they are not doing something right. In the financial education community, there are some financial coaches, like Dave Ramsey, who generally teach people to avoid debt at all cost, except for your mortgage, while others, like Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone, promote using leverage to greatly multiply investment returns. The truth is that there are valid arguments on each side. Personally, I agree that debt should be avoided where possible. However, I also see value in the view that there is good debt and bad debt. Bad debt is when you borrow money to buy liabilities, while good debt is when you borrow money and use it as leverage to buy assets and achieve greater cash flow or return on investment. Most wealthy people have some level of debt, but they use it to support income-generating assets, like a business or real estate, and they then use the income from those investments to repay the loans. Broke people, however, typically borrow money to buy stuff. Liabilities, like cars and clothes, the latest smartphones and trips. Then they work hard and struggle to repay later. This is why debt helps the wise, but hurts the foolish. Let us now consider what the Bible has to say on the matter of debt. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 7 puts it quite bluntly as it declares, "The borrower is servant, slave to the lender." This may seem harsh on the face of it, but this statement is as true today as it ever was. Indeed, it is easy to see why someone may feel like a slave in this economy, where debt is so persuasive and systematic. With anemic economic growth, low to no increase in real income over many decades, plus growing annual inflation, many minimum wage to average income earners can't help but feel like they are living just to pay bills and personal loans and other expenses each month. So life quickly becomes a death trap, a rat race. Considering this sad reality, anyone who desires to get out of debt and grow wealthier must seriously consider this recommendation as presented in Proverbs chapter 6 verse 5. Addressing the danger of indebtedness, it says, "Deliver thyself as a roe, gazelle, from the hand of the hunter, and as a bird from the hand of the fowler." In other words, this proverb is telling you to run, run, run. Try every way possible to escape debt like your life depended on it. The point is that debt may kill your financial prospects, so it must be avoided as far as possible, but when used, it must be done wisely. Let's pause to explore practical steps that can be employed to better manage the top 4 debt-causing items for the average household in America: the credit card, car loan, student loan, and the mortgage. Managing credit card debt. Research shows that more and more working-class people are becoming bogged down by thousands of dollars in credit card debt each year. This is often the most insidious and difficult debt to repay. A number of studies have found that people spend significantly more when paying with a credit card instead of cash. Anyone struggling to pay off credit card debt should consider the following recommendations. Number 1. Start saving to create an emergency fund of at least $1,000. This is important as it will provide a safety cushion in the event there is an emergency. So instead of spending money you do not have from a credit card, you would have to access to your emergency fund. Once you have that emergency fund in place, you can then move up to step 2, which is to start cutting up those credit cards. People have gotten so used to having credit cards, it might be hard to cut them up, but that is one of the best ways to start paying down those cards. It may be a good idea to start by making only minimum payments on other cards while dumping all you can on paying down the smallest card. This will boost your confidence as you move on to bigger debts. This is what Dave Ramsey refers to as the debt snowball method. Or you may decide to pay off the card with the highest interest first. It all depends on what you prefer. The important thing is that you are paying down the debt. Indeed, it is true that credit cards can help to build your credit and earn discounts or reward points on certain transactions. However, the crude reality is that in many cases, credit cards cause people to get into money problems as they are encouraged to spend beyond their means. So people need to think long and hard before taking on credit card debt. The truth is that in most instances, your debit card can serve the same function as a credit card, so it is best to use your debit card instead or just pay with cash. At least you won't be able to spend money that you don't have. Managing a car loan. Car loans can be useful in certain circumstances. However, like credit cards, they can have a devastating impact on your finances if not properly managed. Without a great credit score, auto loans can get really expensive, really fast. Subprime loans, as they are called, often have interest rates of 15% or higher. In such instances, it may be best to keep your loan period shorter, no longer than 36 months, or just try to get a less expensive car. With average payments ranging between $300 and $500 per month, car payments often constitute the largest monthly expense apart from housing and can put a real dent in your budget. A growing number of people can be referred to as being car poor. This means that they earn money that could take care of their needs, but devote so much of their salary towards paying for a car that they have very little left at the end of the day to comfortably cover personal expenses. Those who wish to avoid becoming car poor should consider the following recommendations. Number 1. In most cases, a car is not an investment as it begins to depreciate the minute you drive it off the lot. So instead of buying a new car, especially using a loan, it makes more sense to wait a bit, save and buy a reliable used car, which you can then upgrade a few years later for something better. This is good, as you would own your car, so it cannot be repossessed. Plus, you will save a lot on the interest payments avoided. Number 2. If you must finance your car, then consider putting the largest down payment possible, at least 20%, and keep payments below 10% of your gross monthly income. Number 3. Car leasing has now become very popular as it is often cheaper, convenient, and certainly lucrative for dealers. However, despite the convenience and lower initial cost, leasing is almost always a bad financial idea for the client. For example, if a leased car has a monthly payment of $350, the client will have to spend a total of $12,600 after 36 months. You will have lost this money, as you will have to return the car at the end of the contract period or find new funds to actually make the purchase. After making $12,600, the dealer gets back a fairly new car, which they will promptly resell for its full market value. They win-win, you lose. Managing your student loan debt. Student loan debt has risen exponentially in recent years, and many experts are warning that it may be unsustainable. In many cases, such debts, which were originally intended to help young professionals achieve upward social mobility, actually are so exorbitant that they have the opposite effect of keeping burgeoning professionals poor. In fact, many borrowers confess that even after 20 years of leaving college, they are still saddled with student loans, which sometimes attract very high interest rates. The problem is so bad that many students are simply opting not to pursue higher studies out of fear of falling into the student loan debt trap. Still, studies show that students who earn a university degree, on average, go on to earn significantly more than those who don't. So the question should not be if one should go to college, but how one can afford college without incurring too much debt. To answer this, it may be useful to consider these recommendations. Number 1. Start saving for your children's education from early. College is not an emergency. For example, if you save just $50 monthly for 18 years, you will have at least $10,800 by the time your child is ready for college. Obviously, $10,000 cannot cover college, but the point is that you can save a significant portion of college expenses if you plan and start early. Number 2. After saving for a few years, the college savings may be used to pay down on land or rental property. The monthly savings and/or rental income can be used to cash flow the mortgage so it can pay for itself, then sell it for a profit when the kids are ready for college. Number 3. Apply for affordable schools instead of popular schools, which tend to be 2 to 3 times more expensive than other colleges offering the same degrees. While it is true that in certain circumstances, a university name can help to make job seekers appear more favorable, in most instances, employers will hire the best candidates for the job, not simply the one who went to the more prestigious school. Number 4. Encourage your children to get good grades and participate in extracurricular activities, which can help them earn full or partial scholarships and lessen the financial burden of paying for college. Number 5. In addition to parents saving to send their children to college, kids can also be encouraged to work, where possible, to assist in paying for their college education. Millions of students do part-time work for college each year, and this helps to make them more responsible and resilient. They certainly will become more consummate in their studies when they know that their own money is at stake. Finally, after doing everything possible to prepare for college, including saving, investing, getting scholarships, and going to affordable schools, it may be necessary to make up any shortfall with limited public student loan financing. This can then be repaid easier once the student starts working. However, Parents should never compromise their retirement savings to fund their children through college. That would be reckless. Remember, college is not an emergency. Managing mortgage debt. Most people will agree that it can be quite beneficial to own a home, but most will also agree that the decision to buy a house can quickly become a source of financial distress in the absence of proper planning and preparation. The 2008 financial crisis was triggered by the collapse of the housing market in the U.S. Overpriced houses plummeted in value after it became clear that many people, some in minimum wage jobs, just would not ever be able to pay off their mortgage. As the economy got worse, many people lost their jobs and houses and their investments in stocks and companies affected by the debt crisis. For the average person with a desire to own a home, a mortgage will probably be their largest financial transaction and debt obligation. So, getting this right is a big deal. Your home should feel like a blessing and not a financial burden. Therefore, in order to avoid becoming house poor, having a home mortgage which takes up the majority of your monthly income and leaves you financially impotent, or losing your home to foreclosure, it would be useful to consider the following recommendations. Number 1. Decide to buy a home and start saving for the down payment on your home after securing your emergency fund, which ideally should be able to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses. This is important as it will allow you to feed your family and still cover your mortgage and keep your home if there is a financial shock, like an economic recession or if someone loses their job, until the situation changes. Thousands of mortgage holders are one financial shock away from losing their home, and this is sad. Number 2. Only buy a house you can afford. In this regard, your debt-to-income ratio, or DTI, plays a key role in helping to determine whether you are ready and able to qualify for a mortgage. It's the percentage of your income that goes toward paying your monthly debts. Ideally, your mortgage payment should not be more than 25% of your gross monthly income. Therefore, if your household income is $5,000 per month, your mortgage should not be more than $1,250. In fact, for most lenders, your total debt, including car loan, student loan, and other expenses, should not exceed 36% of your gross income. If it is higher, you probably will be charged higher interest. Number 3. Speaking of interest, go for a mortgage term that is no longer than 15 years. Lenders will offer those who qualify up to a 30-year mortgage, but just be aware that although the money payments may be smaller on a longer-term mortgage, you will also end up paying a lot more in interest. So save by taking a shorter mortgage and trying to pay off the mortgage as early as possible. Don't be house poor. Attitudes to debt and lending. Attitudes to debt repayment vary widely from person to person, but it is important to note that integrity is a quality that must also be cultivated while trying to pay down debt and accumulate wealth. Thousands of people and businesses in the U.S. and around the world file for bankruptcy protection each year, or they negotiate with lenders, and this may be necessary in certain cases. However, many people simply choose not to repay their debt. This is not just unethical and wrong, but it is wickedness indeed according to the Scriptures. Psalm chapter 37 verse 21 states that the wicked borrows and does not repay. So always try your best to repay your loans. Again, you may consider using the debt snowball method, where you pay off the smallest debt and move steadily to the highest. Or you may consider using the debt avalanche method, where you start with a debt with the highest monthly payment or interest rate. In some cases, it may be necessary to consolidate several smaller loans into one loan that has a more manageable payment structure. Regardless of the repayment option you take, the bottom line is that if you seek to build wealth using biblical principles, not repaying debt is not an option. Debt, like smoking, has the potential to adversely affect not just the primary borrower, but it can also have disastrous implications for those who act as guarantors for such loans. Proverbs chapter 6 verses 1 through 3 cautions that one must think twice before standing as a guarantor for others, especially for family or friends. The truth is that sometimes by trying to help others, especially family and friends, from a financial hole, whether by lending directly or by standing as a guarantor, if you are not careful, you may end up taking their burden unto yourself. George S. Clason illustrates this point very well in his book, The Richest Man in Babylon. He tells the story of the farmer, the ox, and the donkey. It features Rodin, the spearmaker, who receives a large sum of money from the king, but is soon pressured by his sister to lend her husband a large sum of money so he can try his hand at becoming a merchant. Perplexed at the thought of losing his hard-earned gold, he turns to Mathon, a wise merchant and money-lender, for advice. Offering sound advice, Mathon said, "Gold bringeth unto its possessor responsibility and a changed position with his fellow men. It bringeth fear lest he lose it or be tricked away from him. It bringeth a feeling of power and ability to do good. Likewise, it bringeth opportunities whereby his very good intentions may bring him into difficulties." To illustrate this point, Mathon told the story of the ox who complained to the donkey that he was so sore and tired after working all day, every day, while pointing out how lucky the donkey was just to have the job of carrying the master around or relaxing on the days when the farmer is not going out. Trying to be helpful to his old friend, the goodly donkey suggested that he should pretend to be sick in the morning so he would not have to do the work. His advice worked. In the morning, the ox pretended to be sick so he was able to relax all day. However, the farmer still needed someone to pull the plow, so he decided to use the donkey instead. Therefore, while the ox relaxed contently, the donkey had to do all his work. At the end of the day, the poor donkey was sore and furious at the ox and perhaps even at himself for the calamity he had to endure. He was simply trying to help his friend. But after that, they never spoke again, and this ended their friendship. The moral of this story was made very clear to Rodin, and it can be applied today. If you desire to help your friend, do so in a way that will not bring your friend's burdens upon thyself. Lessons from the story of the poor widow, the prophet, and her pot of oil. It is unfortunate but true that families of many religious folks are sometimes vulnerable to debt and financial insecurity, as quite often not enough emphasis is placed on creating a strong financial foundation. They pray for blessing, wealth, and prosperity, but often do nothing to put themselves in the position to acquire and maintain it. The Bible declares in James chapter 2, verse 17, that faith without works is dead. So the wise who desires to grow wealthy, while maintaining their faith, must also endeavor to take action and put arrangements in place to provide financial security for their families. 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7 tells the story of a widow and her pot of oil. Her husband, who was a servant of the prophet, died and left her and their children penniless, up to their necks in debt. As she cries to the prophet Elijah, she explains that her debtors are threatening to take her sons as slaves if they cannot repay their debts, and this seems imminent, as they are broke. Initially, her prospects seem very bleak, but God, in His infinite grace and mercy, intervened through the prophet Elijah to turn her situation into a story of hope. So, how can this apply to us today? What are the points to consider, and what lessons can be learned? The first point is that men and women of God must spend time securing the financial futures of their families. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8 says, "Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." This verse shows that God has placed a responsibility on every believer to take care of the financial needs of their families. And this includes instituting measures to ensure their future even after the main breadwinner is gone. With this in mind, in addition to savings and investments, it may be useful to consider some kind of insurance policy where the family gets a payout if the breadwinner or insured person passes, since they will no longer be able to earn an income. This should be at least 5 to 6 times your annual salary. No amount of money can replace the loss of a loved one, but it will definitely help to cushion the blow until the survivors get back on their feet. Secondly, if your main work is with the church, it may be necessary to take steps to ensure that you are duly compensated financially for your work. This is controversial, or at least sensitive in some circles, but the scriptures are certainly clear. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 18 declares that, "Thou shalt not muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn, and the laborer is worthy of his reward." This same sentiment is echoed in Luke chapter 10, verse 7, and Matthew chapter 10, verse 10. In these verses, Jesus sent out his disciples and told them not to hesitate to receive provisions from those who are served, as the workman is worthy of his meat. I have seen too many instances where former pastors, evangelists, musicians, and other church workers spend their lives working for the church, but they or their families end up living in squalid conditions in old age because enough was not done to ensure that future financial needs were taken care of. Certainly, the church has a role, but ultimately the responsibility is on us as individuals to provide for the current and future needs of our families. The next point I would like to make is that a penniless person is more likely to be sad or depressed, even if they have the joy of the Lord, than someone with the means to take care of their daily needs. In verse 1 of 2 Kings chapter 4, the poor widow came to the prophet Elijah crying, but by the grace of God, her situation was turned around. The man of God gave her hope by helping her to create a business. This is often missed or overlooked by Bible thinkers, but that is exactly what happened. And there is good news in this for us today. Every person with the right support, mindset, foresight, and/or a good business plan can start a business, and you don't have to have money to do it. You just need to start with what you have right now. It may be your skills, talents, time, or effort. Just offer some product or service that is of value to people, and they will pay you for it. That is what a business does. "What do you have in your house?" asked Elijah. "Nothing except a pot of oil," said the widow. She could not see any value in the little that she had. But the prophet was able to see that the little pot of oil she had was enough to start her miracle and turn her life around. In verse 3, he said, "Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go, pour oil into all the jars, and as each jar is filled, put it to one side." After filling all the jars, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. This is a miracle indeed. But miracles continue to happen every day all around us, as many people start from nothing, or with very little, and end up leading multi-million-dollar businesses. In verse 7, she went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." What is the lesson for us today? We just need to start to put our simple business ideas into practice, pray, seek guidance, and do your best, and the rest just may turn out to be a miracle. From this, we can see the value in saying that heaven helps those who help themselves. Like the widow with the morsel of meal and a cruse of oil, and the boy with the 5 fish and 2 loaves, this story proves that God is able to multiply what we surrender. Chapter 8. The Value of Investing. After learning the source of wealth, the value of saving, budgeting, and managing debt, you will be on your way to accumulating an emergency fund equivalent to at least 3 to 6 months of expenses. With this secured, there really is no need to keep parking money in a traditional savings account, which, in most cases, will earn less than 1% interest per year. Now it's time to start learning to invest so that your money can start to work for you. Remember, poor people work for money, but the wealthy work to build assets that will produce cash flow. So, after a while, your money, assets, investments can start to make more money for you even while you sleep. Having a lot of money may make you rich, but it does not make you wealthy. Many lotto winners, musicians, and athletes rack up millions in cash over a relatively short period, only to lose it all and go broke again because they have no financial education and little or no assets continuously generating income. So, the minute they get injured or lose their primary revenue source, they go broke. Wealth is like a river fed by different streams of income that constantly cause cash flow into your pocket. A wealthy individual, therefore, may not always be rich, but he will never be poor again, even if he never works another day in his life. Savings alone may provide a certain level of financial security for a while, but saving and investing combined will provide financial peace and independence for life. There's a popular Chinese proverb that says, "The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." So, in the context of building wealth through investing, this means that if you want success and growth in the future, the best time to start investing is now. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verse 1 says, "Cast thy bread upon the waters, and ye shall find it after many days." This passage is often misunderstood, but perhaps it is best interpreted as a call to action relating to investing. In ancient Israel, bread referred to grain or wheat or resources in general. Therefore, the act of casting bread represents a charge to put your resources out there, whether in business or any form of enterprise, with a plan and the hope of realizing real returns in time. This charge exactly encompasses what investing is all about. Investing can also be viewed like sowing seeds, as it involves risk, but the potential rewards are great. The farmer who saves a bushel of corn after the harvest has done a good thing, but the farmer who saves that same bushel of corn and manages to plant some of the seeds in the springtime will have exponentially more corn in the next harvest compared to the farmer who simply hides the original bushel of corn in a safe place. Spending your entire life working for material gain makes you a slave to money. Therefore, the wise person learns to flip the script. By investing, you become the master and money becomes your slave, as you will make your money work for you. Indeed, we live in a troubled and uncertain world. Still, we must be courageous and not allow the fear of the unknown or the fear of failure or the fear of losing to stop us from investing and building wealth. As we seek to confront our fear of increased exposure to risk while investing, we are admonished in Ecclesiastes chapter 11 verse 4 that, "He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that observeth at the clouds shall not reap." This means that our ignorance of the future is not to put a stop to action. Benson's Bible commentary puts it this way: "He who neglects the necessary works of sowing and reaping, because the weather is not exactly suitable to his desires, will lose his harvest." From this, we can extrapolate that persons will never invest, which is expressed by sowing, and consequently not receive or build wealth, which is called reaping, if they are discouraged from it by every doubt and difficulty. Verse 2 of Ecclesiastes chapter 11 provides very sound advice on how we should approach investments in order to maximize returns while curtailing risk. It says, "Give a portion to 7 and to 8, for you know not what evil shall be." This is timely advice in this age of market volatility and general economic uncertainty. The interpretation is that the consummate investor must always strive to diversify holdings, investments, and income streams. This will help to limit possible loss in times of trouble. This point is crucial as well because it exposes a point of vulnerability for most working-class people. Their job is their only source of income. This teaches us that depending on a job alone is not wise. What if you get sick and can't work, or if you're fired tomorrow? The average millionaire has several sources of income, and most own or invest in businesses or other cash-producing assets. Hard work is good, but hard work alone will not take us anywhere anytime soon. We must start to work smarter. The smartest way to become wealthy is to own assets that produce great cash flow over time. Examples of some of the best and simplest cash-producing assets that we should consider include the following: real estate investing, rental property, Airbnb, or even flipping houses, investing in stocks, or owning a business. Let us examine each of these a little. Number 1. Investing in real estate. Without question, many people desire to own a home, and this is a good thing. But it must be noted that the acquisition of a house can become a burden if not properly managed. George S. Clason, in his book, The Richest Man in Babylon, says, "Make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. This clearly indicates that purchasing a home is not always a profitable investment. To make it profitable, you can run a physical or online business from home, or if your house is big enough, you can rent out a section of it and earn an income each month. Many investors acquire multi-family buildings, live in one unit, then rent out the rest for cash flow each month. Sometimes the earning is even enough to cover the mortgage, which means that the owner can live for free. In Clayson's book, Arcad offers advice about buying versus renting your principal residence and potentially using your residence to establish a business. He says, "I recommend that every man own the roof that sheltereth him and his, and it is not beyond the ability of any well-intentioned man to own his home." So it is good to own a home, but take time to ensure that your home becomes a benefit and not an albatross around your neck. Too many individuals purchase homes with huge mortgages because they think it's an investment, but soon become house poor. In most instances, owning a personal residence with a mortgage, especially in modern cities, however nice or expensive, does not qualify as an income-producing asset investment, but a liability instead, as it usually produces no cash flow. Robert Kiyosaki puts this in perspective in his revolutionary new book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where he redefines an asset as anything that puts money in your pocket, while a liability takes money from your pocket. He reminds us that the poor remain poor because they spend their money buying stuff and paying bills. The middle class remain poor or fail to build wealth because they trade their time for money, then buy liabilities that they think are assets, like a house or a nice car. While the rich grow more wealthy every day because they work not for money, but to buy assets that produce cash flow, like a business. Robert notes that a house or car may be assets indeed to the bank because it puts money in their pocket every month, but for the average person, these are liabilities. A house may become an asset if it's bought for the purpose of renting or eventual resale. A car may become an asset if it is used as a taxi, but in general, these things, though useful and necessary, are liabilities. I must emphasize that nothing is wrong with buying new cars and nice homes, as long as you can afford them and you are aware that they are potential liabilities. On this point, Kiyosaki recommends that we focus on acquiring assets, then use the cash flow from those assets to purchase the things we desire. The aim of real estate investing is to own properties that continuously produce cash flow and profits over time. 90% of self-made millionaires acquire their wealth through real estate investing. They buy, build, renovate buildings, then sell or rent them for a profit. For the average investor, real estate also offers the best way to develop significant wealth. A good way to begin is actually by buying your personal residence. You can typically buy a house with less than 10% down at a low interest rate. Live there for a while and develop the property. Then you can sell it for a profit or rent it and use the monthly cash flow to pay the mortgage while using your original mortgage to purchase your new personal residence. This process can be repeated as many times as possible as you seek to build your real estate investment portfolio. You may make a living selling houses, properties, as a real estate agent, broker, but you will make your fortune by owning, renting, and selling properties and investing in real estate. Number 2, investing in stocks. Warren Buffett is perhaps regarded as the greatest value investor of all time. By investing in stocks, he has been able to amass a fortune of over $85 billion, and he has been consistently listed as one of the richest persons in the world over the last few decades. According to Buffett, stocks are one of the biggest assets anyone can own. Still, we know that the trading of securities is generally regarded as a risky proposition, so it is important to note that stock investing is different from stock trading. Investors focus on the long term, like years or decades, while traders seek short-term gains. Using sophisticated algorithms, savvy trading strategies, many have become rich from trading securities indeed, but many fortunes and life savings have also been lost in the murky business of high finance. The trading of securities is definitely not for everyone. However, as Mr. Buffett has noted many times, you don't have to be a genius to invest in stocks. It is clear that no one can accurately control, time, or predict the stock market with absolute certainty, so short-term trading or day trading ultimately amounts to gambling, and this is not supported by the Bible. However, investing for the long haul is absolutely recommended, as it is a proven and tested way of growing wealth over time. While no one can accurately predict the markets all the time, and in spite of the booms and busts over the last century, data shows that the stock market has historically returned an average of 10% annually before inflation. Therefore, the goal as a long-term investor is to buy shares of stock in great companies, then earn a monthly income through dividends, or sell them later for a profit. With this approach, you never have to worry about volatility in the markets. Just look for a great company that you understand, buy some shares, and watch the value of your stocks increase over time. The average person becomes fearful during times of economic crisis or when the stock market crashes. But for the long-term investors, this is the best time to buy stocks. Buffett always says that you should be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. Fortunes are made when you buy stocks while everyone is selling and prices are low, then hold for the long term or sell when the price is high. Buffett's first rule of investing is never lose money. That means never sell when prices are low. It is worth remembering that the price of a stock does not always reflect the value of a company. Furthermore, even if the prices fall during difficult economic times, it does not change the number of shares that you own. So just hold on to those shares or use the opportunity to buy more shares in those great companies while the prices are low, and you will make a killing as the prices rise. Number 3. Invest in growth stock mutual funds, index funds, or ETFs. If your knowledge of great companies or your risk appetite is not strong enough to invest in individual companies, especially given the volatility that often characterizes the market, then amalgamated funds such as mutual funds, index funds, or ETFs may be the best way and safest ways of investing in the stock market. Mutual funds are investments that pool your money together with other investors to purchase shares of a collection of stocks, bonds, or other securities, referred to as a portfolio, that might be difficult to recreate on your own. Mutual funds are typically overseen by a portfolio manager, for example, Investopedia.com. A portfolio manager's primary goal is to seek out investment opportunities that help enable the fund to outperform its benchmark, which is generally some widely followed index such as the Standard & Poor's 500. For the average small investor, mutual funds can be a smart and cost-effective way to invest. Most funds will let you buy shares with as little as $2,500. In addition, minimums are often waived or reduced if investors buy a fund within a retirement account or use certain brokerage features, like automatic investments, to regularly invest over a set period. Buying shares in a mutual fund is also an easy way to help diversify your investments, which is really another way of saying that you won't have all your eggs in one basket. For instance, most mutual funds hold well over 100 securities. More on this can be found at www.fidelity.com/learning-center/investment-products/what-r-mutual-funds. What is an index fund? An index fund is a type of mutual fund with a portfolio constructed to match or track the components of a financial market index, such as the Standard & Poor's 500 Index, S&P 500. Index funds typically provide broad market exposure, low operating expenses, and low portfolio turnover. More information at Investopedia.com. ETFs. Exchange-traded funds are a collection of tens, hundreds, or even thousands of stocks or bonds traded as a single investment on major stock exchanges. ETFs combine the diversification of mutual funds. They are passively managed as they track major market indices, but they offer the benefit of lower investment minimums and real-time pricing. So, what is the conclusion of the matter? If you are not an expert in investing in individual companies, it may be a good idea to consider investing in good, low-cost mutual funds, index funds, or ETFs. Data shows that passively managed funds that simply track major market sectors have on average outperformed actively managed portfolios over the mid to long term. Financial guru Dave Ramsey, in his blog, www.daveramsey.com, posts that investing in an index isn't a bad idea for your retirement since the S&P has averaged nearly 12% growth over the long term. This is definitely great advice. Number 4. Start a business. Perhaps the best and fastest way to build wealth is to start a great business. Most, if not all, of the wealthiest entrepreneurs and business moguls in the world either own or invest in great businesses, which produce cash flow, even when they are sleeping. This is not easy, but if done well, it is definitely worth it. Offer a service or sell products that give clients value or solve real problems that people have, and they will gladly pay you for it with cash. Going back to the inspirational story of the prophet and a debt-ridden widow in 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 7, we see that she was challenged to take a step of faith and start a business that changed her life. Her husband was a very loyal servant to the prophet, but he died and left his family broke and at the mercy of his creditors. The prophet was moved with compassion when he saw her plight, so he decided to help her start an enterprise to generate cash flow and bring her financial freedom. There are several lessons that we can learn from this story. Here are 2 of them. Principle number 1. Use what you have now to start your business. People mistakenly think that you need a lot of money or complex business ideas to start a side hustle, but the best way to start your business is by offering your time, your skills, and resources to the public in exchange for income. In verse 2, the prophet asked, "What do you have in your house?" And the widow said, "Nothing except a cruse of oil." Well, of course, although she didn't think much of what she had, it is exactly what the prophet used to start the business. So she started to sell oil, and with a little divine intervention, it just kept on flowing to the extent that they did not have enough vessels to store the oil. Here, we learn the importance of starting with what we have, and more resources will come. In the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, we learn that the universe conspires to help those who pursue their dreams, and this is definitely true. Principle number 2. While it may be safer and generally better to reinvest your profits from sales back into the business, it is sometimes necessary to use leverage debt to achieve greater scale, efficiency, and ultimate profitability. After running out of oil pots in verse 3, the widow was advised to send and borrow as many vessels as possible. She did this without hesitation, and still, the need was so great as the oil kept on flowing and people kept on buying. In essence, one should never take on debt lightly, but as we discussed before, there is good debt and bad debt. Bad debt is when you borrow money to buy liabilities, while good debt is when you borrow money and use it as leverage to buy assets and achieve greater cash flow or return on investment. Most of the world's greatest businesses use debt to expand their asset base and thereby increase revenue. It is true that debt should generally be avoided, but it is sometimes useful indeed. Chapter 9. The Value of Preparing for Retirement. Walking in wealth and abundance should not have to stop when you stop working, so plans must be put in place to secure income for the future. The Bible does not make specific mention of the word retirement. There is no talk of 401k plans, Roth IRAs, or particular retirement strategies. However, the important principle of making adequate financial preparation for the future is fully addressed in many sections of the Scriptures. As previously referenced, Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 8 is one of those scriptures that offer useful insights into the importance of saving for the future and planning for retirement. It basically says, consider the ant and be wise. Although it has no master, it secures food and supplies during the winter and harvest in preparation for the winter. Through this allegory, we are reminded that resources may not always be available to us, or we may not always have the ability or opportunity to work and earn when we are old. So, we must do everything possible while we are young to prepare and secure resources that will be needed during those sensitive years. This is important as it enables us to retire with grace and live those golden years, having financial peace, security, and independence. Retirement planning. Once you have saved 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund, and you have started investing in a business, the stock market, real estate, or other income-generating enterprise, the next priority must be to start planning for and saving towards retirement. The best time to start is now. When you are younger, you can afford to take greater risk in business or make more aggressive investment decisions. However, as you approach retirement, you will need to have a safer, more secure, and reliable source of income. Retire as a Millionaire Challenge. Any normal person can retire as a millionaire. Open a retirement account as soon as possible. Most companies offer good 401k plans, or if you are self-employed, you may need to open a Roth IRA. The difference is that with a Roth IRA, you pay taxes up front, and later earnings are tax-free. But with a 401k plan, income tax is deferred until you are ready to retire. This allows more time, so the money you would have otherwise paid in taxes can work for you. Many businesses also offer to match your contribution up to a certain percentage of your income. This is free money, so be sure to find out the maximum match your employer offers. Then maximize your contribution to meet that level. Financial teachers such as Dave Ramsey generally recommend that you commit up to 15% of your income towards retirement. With an average income of, say, $35,000 per year, 15% would be $5,250 per year or $437 monthly. Now, let's do the math and prove that you can retire a millionaire simply by saving 15% of an average salary of $35,000 in a 401k or IRA. If at age 27, you start to invest $5,250 per year in growth mutual funds for 33 years at 9% interest, which is below the average annual return on growth stock, mutual, or index funds, you will have earned an impressive total of $1,033,699 by the time you're eligible to retire and cash out at 60. That would make you a millionaire. That is the power of compound interest. To achieve maximum returns on your 401k or IRAs, you should put your money in some low-cost growth stock mutual or index funds. Historical data shows that on average, these funds consistently outperform the market, and they have achieved an average growth of 12% over the past several decades. In addition to traditional retirement plans, older folk can choose to sell larger family homes and purchase more affordable ones, then live from the profits. This can also be done with land and other forms of real estate that may be difficult to manage in old age. Profits can again be invested in a diversified portfolio of bonds and dividend-earning mutual funds. A 4% annual drawdown rate is recommended to ensure the sustainability of the funds. Persons may also continue to earn income in retirement from earlier investments in real estate or investments in other businesses. Estate succession planning. Estate planning is crucial to preserving wealth across generations. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22a stresses that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children. This means that the wise will not only make preparations to have sufficiency in the present, but he will ensure that his estate is so managed that resources will last through his years of retirement and continue even after he is gone. His wealth will therefore become a blessing to his offspring. The value of creating a will. Insufficient planning for the tidy transfer of inherited wealth can lead to confusion and even the disintegration of entire families. It is said that where there is a will, there is a way. And this can be interpreted literally in the context of retirement. Proper estate succession planning requires the timely creation of a will, and the contents of this document not be kept as a secret. Every eligible family member should know how the estate owner desires to divide the estate while he is alive. This will prevent the chaotic and costly legal disputes that often ensue when there is a lack of transparency regarding inheritance. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 offers assurance that God's thoughts and plans for us are good, so we can endeavor to live the retirement of our dreams by observing the instructions about money management and preparing for the future as outlined in His Word. You have been listening to Biblical Principles of Building Wealth, Faith, and Finance by Ainsley Reid, narrated by Tim Miller Voiceovers, LLC, tmvo.studio. Copyright 2020. All rights reserved.